Thank you for tuning in to The Blueprint. I'm your host, Regina Fairey. And I just want to say that, you are actually the blueprint that's waiting to be designed. And so, as we go into our broadcast today, I want you to keep in mind that as you hear the testimony from our guest here today, that you will begin to take insight, take self-inventory, and evaluate yourself to see where you are, because I know something is going to be said that's going to cause you to begin to see the blueprint the way that you always imagine. So I have with me today my guest, Elder Sheila Slew. I had an opportunity of meeting this woman of God through her apostle, which is one of my favorite spiritual brothers in the whole world. And so just always had a love for this woman of God and that ministry. I just love the dynamics of it and what it brings, what it have brought to the community here in Charlotte. So thank you so much for being my guest today. And I want you to share with our audience what it looks like after the molestation.
Amen. Well, a lot of the traumatic experiences that I encountered through life started at an early age. Going through the abandonment from my natural father, not really knowing who he was, going through that cycle of, trying to figure out the whys, why did you leave me, and so it opened the door to a lot of other different things that led to the cycles that I encountered growing up. And so, of course, after he left, my mother remarried, and it was during that time that I was molested by my stepfather at a very young age, probably about at 8, 9 that I remember, for a couple of years. And of course that opened the door to so much emotional, mental, physical, things that took me into a whirlwind that I was upset with my mother, mad at my mother, upset with family members, upset with myself, trying to figure out, okay, why are these different things, even at that age, trying to figure out why are these different things taking place, and just the playback of the different acts that took place, the different, and sometimes, of course, with deliverance, you have to get to the nitty-gritty, dirty stuff, remembering what happened in the bedroom, remembering what happened in the laundry room, remembering the acts that took place in the car, and really trying to process all of that, those different situations in life, being mad at my mother because I felt like she didn't protect me, or be there as a mother should be. So, even in that, it created a separation between my mother and I, because, during that time, I felt like she took his side. Even when I expressed her and talked to her about it, at that time, I still felt like she took his side and she didn't believe me. And it was kind of, swept up under the rug kind of situation. Because a lot of what it was, I think, with my family, because of status. Because of status. He was military vet, police officer, nice house, nice car. So we can't let this get out about our family.
Right.
So, that continued to keep me in a place of, being sheltered. Even growing up, even after that, I could be so closed up and I could sit in a corner and people wouldn't even realize I was there.
Wow.
That's how shut down I ended up getting as a child, as an early child. They'd be like, and it could be a room full of people, but I would be so closed, shut down, have this wall up that they wouldn't even realize that I was in the room when it got to that point, And so just different things that, I dealt with because of also, my background, dealing with things growing up in school, being called bougie, being told I act white because that's not proper, that I didn't really fit in with everybody. So it was a constant tearing away of my self-esteem, self-worth, self-confidence. My identity, was robbed through those years. And, it got to the point, even just trying to find love, and I ended up getting pregnant at 16, and even suffering through the rejection of that from his father, because of course, we're young, don't know what we're doing in the first place, because he was a football player at our high school, he was more concerned about his image. So of course, when he found out I was pregnant, it was like, I don't want anything else to deal with you, And even through that process, dealing with that rejection when he was trying to be more responsible and come around, because he stayed in a foster home. His foster mother actually told him that if he became a part of my life and our son's life, she would send him to another foster home.
So did your son, was he in your son's life?
He was not. Actually, what happened was one of his foster brothers would come to visit and bring things and, interact with them and go back to him.
So he had to, so he kind of dealt a little with rejection. From
a very early age. So, and then of course, dealing with the traumatic experience of his father dying. So he never really got a chance to know his father, growing up. So all of that, of course, is built up to, like I said, my identity being robbed because of those things that happened, me not understanding, of course, not being in a place to where, I could trust somebody to talk about it, deal with it, and things of that nature. So, the fact that a lot of decisions I made in life, a lot of the choices that I made, they were not good.
Right.
They were not good, but there was still that little part in me that still wanted to live. So, even after that, I went to college, got a degree in accounting. It's been 8 years in the United States Army, so I've had the opportunity to really travel. But even in that, the dark side of my life was still tugging at me and pulling at me. So it was still, things that I was doing that infected my environment and those around me. So, I didn't care what I said to people, didn't care what people thought about me, didn't care if you want to be my friend or not. So people's opinion didn't really matter. So, because I had that guard up, and it wasn't them per se, it was just, I don't want you to get close to me. I don't want you to know me. I'll let you in just a little bit, and once I feel like you're getting too close, then I'm going to hurt you to cause you to back up.
Wow. So how long? I know you said earlier that when you went through the molestation from your stepfather, you became very bitter and angry at your mom. How long were you mad and bitter with your mom before your relationship was restored?
Our relationship didn't get restored till I got saved.
Wow.
And I've been saved probably about 12, 13 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's still kind of new a little bit.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and it was to the point, I married, of course, and had children, and, I didn't, for years, I would not let my mother see my children. I wouldn't send her pictures. I wouldn't let her visit. They weren't allowed to call her on the phone, because to me, if that bitterness was in there that you didn't take care of me, so why do I think you're going to take care of my children? So they weren't allowed to visit during the summer. We didn't go home for holidays. I didn't send her gifts. It was nothing.
How did after the relationship was restored, did you guys talk about it? Did she tell you how she felt, or?
We did. We tried. I tried, I guess you could say. But I think there was a part of her that still didn't want to deal with it. So, it just took me praying and really seeking God for, forgiveness and my ability to forgive her and to let that go. But that part didn't actually take place till the minute of our relationship really didn't take place till after a sermon that was preached by my apostle, to call your offender and let, tell them that you forgive them.
So that word, when you heard that word.
Yeah, he was the first person that popped in my mind.
Wow. And so you called, and what happened?
I called him that same Sunday, and, he answered the phone, and, something in you tells you, you don't answer the phone, let it go to voicemail so you can have an excuse not to obey God. But I knew when that word was preached that I had to call him. I had to call him, and I called him, and I said, I forgive you. Wow. I forgive you.
And at that moment, what happened? Tell our viewing audience what happened.
At that moment when I called, he picked up the phone, I said, I forgive you. It was just like such a weight a burden had lifted off of me. That bitterness, that anger, that resentment had lifted off of me, and I immediately felt the healing and the deliverance, that my apostle at that time said would happen. God moved right in that instance of me forgiving and letting go. And I think that it even took it to another level when he confessed that, I know I did wrong. I know he admitted his wrong. He didn't try to sugarcoat it. He didn't try to, make anything up, but, he confessed to what he did.
Yeah, he actually took ownership.
Exactly.
He took ownership
exactly
of what had actually taken place
exactly
in that secret place. And so when you heard that word, and I think that is so profound that you would say that when you hear that word, that one word, it's always one word.
Exactly.
And that you heard that one word and you responded to the call, actually. And so a lot of times people don't respond to the call, or respond to what was given to them, because nobody really knows what you're going through other than God. And so by his spirit, he began to speak and he began to release, and you responded. And so had you been disobedient, we wouldn't be talking about after.
Yes, that's true.
We would be talking, there would be no after.
That's true.
And so I just thank God that you responded to the call, and then he answered the phone, and then he was able to take ownership of his wrong and what he'd done. So at that point, when that took place, is that when you and your mom relationship began to become established?
Yeah, everything then started, becoming more connected, where there was a disconnect. So, my mother and I, we definitely talk more now, send pictures, the kids and things.
So how was your children towards that? Did they feel towards you a certain way that you withheld them from their grandmother, or?
No, at least nothing that they have expressed. At least nothing that they've really expressed. It probably did affect my oldest son more so, because of course, when I had him at 16, he was used to being around her. So, and then when I left for the military, he had to stay with her for a while. So, there was a couple of issues with him during the separation, when he finally came to live with me. But I think because we traveled so much in the military, it didn't really bother them.
Right.
Yeah, it didn't really, affect them to where they like, why you won't let us see our grandmother, but because we were overseas, so you can't see your grandmother.
So did you go through that part where you felt like it was something that you had done to cause the abuse to happen, or because I know sometimes a lot of females and males feel like it was something that they did to bring the attention to themselves. Did you feel like that?
Yeah, and for a long time, like I said, I closed myself up, and before God really began to purge my heart and cleanse me, the wise was always there, because I felt like, if my natural father had been there, this wouldn't have happened. If my mother had stood up or a family member had stood up, this wouldn't have happened, And so it was different things, and for a long time, I wouldn't dress myself up. Like, this came with the process of God, wear makeup. I wouldn't wear makeup. I wouldn't wear anything to attract, somebody. And even if I did attract a man, it was like, yeah, you could spend the night, but when we done, you have to go home. It was no kind of attachment. I allowed myself to get attached to anybody. So, for a long time, it was sneakers, t-shirts, sweatpants, no purse. I didn't do any of that. So, it was just through God's process of healing and deliverance that I came into, who I am, and knowing who I am, that I'm not a product of my past, that was not my fault. And a lot of times people need to be told that, the molestation is not your fault, the rape is not your fault, the abandonment is not your fault. And we can't always control the choices that other people make, whether good or bad, but we have to make a choice on how we're going to allow those things to affect or infect our lives. And so, that is how, God had to really deal with me getting to the truth, understanding and knowing that God desires the truth in the inward parts, to dwell within us, and to not be entangled in the lies and, the confusion and the double mind, even being angry with God, because a lot of times when we go through those traumatic experiences, we get mad at God because we're like, okay, God, why did you let this happen?
Right, where were you at?
Exactly. So it's just getting into that secret place, continuously confessing, not allowing the enemy to trap you up in shame or guilt or condemnation, because a lot of people don't talk about it because they're afraid of how people will view them afterwards. But your liberty, you can't hold that back.
So what would you say to a young lady that may be watching this broadcast right now, and she's holding this animosity and this grudge, and she's holding this bitterness and this resentment, this rage and this anger? She's dealing with all those different strongholds. What would you say to her in regards to her mother?
I think the main thing that you have to remember is that forgiveness is always the key. We've heard the saying, forgiveness is not for the other person, but it's for you. And just being in a place to where you forgive and let it go. And that's where the true process is going to begin. A true process of healing and deliverance is going to take place. And just knowing that it's not your fault. It is not your fault. You didn't do anything to cause this. You didn't do anything to bring this on. And just making the decision that I'm no longer going to live a life where I'm in prison or where I'm boxed in because of the things of my past, and letting go of that old baggage, letting go of those things that create the garbage in your heart, and allowing God to begin to mold you and begin to do the surgery that is needed so that you can be whole and complete. And even if you try to talk to your parents, because a lot of people won't deal with it because, their parents may shut down or they feel it may create an argument. Don't allow yourself to continue to hold on to that stuff, even in that stage where they may not talk about it, or understand and know that God still loves you, even when you feel like nobody else loves you. Understand and know that God still loves you, and it is His desire to see you healed, to see you whole. And the main thing is finding that safe place. A lot of people, when they go through so many traumatic experiences, they don't feel safe anymore. They don't feel safe with anybody because their trust is robbed. Their trust is destroyed. So it's being in that place to where you can be safe, to be able to say, this is what I'm feeling. Being in that place to where if you feel like you got to scream, scream. You feel like you got to cry, kick and scream. Be in that place to where you can do all that so that what God needs to take place within you can happen.
Wow. So that is just wow, that's amazing. So what would you say to a mother that have experienced what your mom have experienced before? What can you say to her to cause her to understand the pain and the silent cry from her son or her daughter? What can you say to her to get her to a place where she'll begin to hear their silent cry?
Love. I think love is definitely the key. Just love is the key. Not playing, the blame game, but understanding their side of the story, understanding allowing them the opportunity, avenue to speak what is going on in their heart, even if you don't understand it, even if you don't have an explanation. Because sometimes the greatest thing that you can give to somebody is just an ear to hear. You may not have all the answers, but allowing them the opportunity to be able to voice the hurts and the pains, and even if they state that they're mad at you, allow them that without you getting defensive or without you, being offended by what they may say or think. And that is where the mending process, because they need that. Right. I didn't have that, so it was suppressed for so many years. And, a lot of times when it's suppressed, we make our decision, our identity is rooted by that, right. Becomes that. So, allowing them to get that out, allowing them to speak it, allowing them to cry, however long it may take. Right. We got to remember that patience and love is the key in healing and deliverance.
Wow, that is so amazing. And I know that they're touched by the testimony, they're touched by what you're sharing. They probably never heard it before, come from someone, and they can hear the genuineness and the the authenticity of what you are releasing here on this evening that will bring them to a place of accountability. I love the fact that he took ownership and he didn't, try to deny it. And I love the fact that you and your mom began to regain that trust again, and that bond, that mother and daughter bond. I wouldn't know what that feels like for if I had a child and those things happened to her or him, and it just, it's almost like just dropped off the face of the earth. And I'm divinely connected to you because I carried you for those months, and I gave birth to you, and it's almost like she was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Yeah. Just stuck there. I want to believe my daughter. I want to trust my daughter, and at the same time, I want to believe this man. I want to trust this man. And sometimes what happens in that mother is she began to think of some inadequacies that she lacked. There's something that I lacked in myself for you to look at my daughter and touch my daughter and fondle my daughter and abuse my daughter. So, everybody is going through some type of trauma. Everybody in that in your situation, in your past situation, had to go through something. And I know you said that when your brothers, your siblings got older, you began to share with them what happened to you. You want to just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Once I, gave my life over to Christ and began to understand the warfare and how the attacks of the enemy, why things were happening. My brothers, I felt that it was only fair to them to share what happened, because I understand generational curses, and how the enemy can play on family members, and them, if we don't talk about it, how they won't be broken, So I called both of my brothers and began to tell them what happened, and of course, just being honest, I said, you don't have to believe it, you don't have to, but I have no reason to lie, but this is what it is, and so, of course, they were open, surprisingly. They received it, and and I told them, I said, because I don't want you to fall into the trap of something, because for all I know, this could have been a generational curse through his family that was never broken. And so, just telling my brothers what happened, I believe gave them an opportunity to be able to understand why, if or if not, they were having these urges, for children, or pornography, or adultery, or just the things that those, molestation opens the door to give them an avenue to stop it, and to really be able to reflect within themselves what's, I'm not this person, I'm not going to be this person. So, I think that closed that generational curse.
You brought up a good point there. Did you have an opportunity to ask your mom, or did she say, did anything ever happen to her when she was a little girl?
No, we talked off and on, but she never really confessed to it happening to her.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Because like you said, generational, just come down that lineage, and that's why, we have to know how to break it and break those curses. And, it's amazing how when we go to the doctor's office for our visits, they ask us, they want to know your history. Is this in your line? Is this in your line? But when it comes to the avenue of God, we don't do that. And it needs to be more prevalent in the church, that we will begin to look so that we can learn about these different, genealogy, our genealogy, and the different generational things that we may have inherited. And so we want to sever those ties and those bloodline curses and those generational curses. We find ourselves doing the same thing that they went through, but we don't know what they went through because they don't want to talk about it, because, during that time it was dark secrets. They want to sweep it under the rug and act like nothing happened. But one day you would have to eventually move that rug and clean up under there.
That's right.
And so when that day may come, we got to be ready to face what's under there.
Exactly.
And so dealing with the generational curses, and dealing with the deliverance and the healing. And so I want you to share with our audience the healing process and what molestation, what it looks like afterwards.
Amen.
You know, how you went through the healing of it and the deliverance of it, and you know where you are today and how you conquered it, how you overcame it. Just talk to our audience a little bit.
Well, one of the ways that I conquered it is definitely standing in prayer, daily confessing, because, you know, even though we know that deliverance may come, we understand and know that the enemy is going to come back and try us with those same emotions, those same, you know, feelings that try to overwhelm us and make us think that we're not over our past. But you have to get into that safe place to where, you know, you're able to confess what is going on in your heart and in your mind, those things that are troubling your spirit, you know, because the thing about it is we have to understand that the enemy, he's made it plain what he desires to do in our life. He said, I've come to kill, I come to steal, and I come to destroy. But we have to understand that God has called us to have life and to have it more abundantly. So that's the thing about it. You have to choose life. You have to choose life. You know, even to this day, you know, I've grown naturally. I've grown spiritually. Even my son that I had at 16, he is now a doctor.
Oh, wow.
He's a doctor. My second son is going to school for physical therapy. So these bonds can be broken.
Yeah.
And God, you know, this allowing God to lead you, to make those crooked paths straight, you know, because you have to understand that God has already ordered your steps in his word, but we have to be determined to have the ear to hear so that God can continue to lead us by his wisdom, his guidance, his knowledge, because the enemy wants to rob us of our identity.
Yes.
And so when we continue to hold on to our past, that baggage, that hurt, that pain, it robs us of our identity.
Right.
You know, it keeps those walls built up. It keeps us with our hearts guarded. It keeps us not being, you know, willing to be open to people so they can know the true you, true you, because it's drowned in that hurt, that pain, and that bitterness. And so you have to get into a place to say, you know what, God, I'm ready. But it's going to take you being ready. We can be ready for you all day, but it's going to take you saying, you know what, God, enough is enough. I'm tired of these cycles. I'm tired of this, you know, being found in bed after bed with different man or different woman. I'm tired of living this lifestyle. I'm tired of drowning it out with alcohol. Just when I get sober, I'm back in that same, you know, feeling and emotion again. But it's going to take you saying, okay, God, I'm ready to deal with the truth. I'm ready to let this go. Purge me, God. Cleanse me, God. Help me, God. Lead me, God. And it all starts with God, because the Bible said to seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. So where the enemy has robbed you, you know, of your life, of your happiness, of your joy, of your peace, of your strength, of your faith, when you begin to seek God in that secret place, he'll add all of that back to you, and he'll add those things that have been taken away from you by the enemy back to you, so that you can be whole, so that you can know that you really are fearfully and wonderfully made, so that you can understand and know that God created you in his image and his likeness. So that when you look at yourself in the mirror again, you see beauty. You see something positive. You're not turning away. You know, so it's getting to that place, say, God, I'm ready to take off the mask. I've covered it long enough with the hair weave and the makeup and the Gucci bag and the heels, but I'm ready to take off the layers of my past, the layers of my pain. I'm ready to take this mask off, because I'm tired of being fake. I'm tired of being phony. I'm ready to know who I am, so I can live that prosperous and abundant life that you called me to live. But it's going to take you making the first step and continuing to go even beyond how the enemy may try to fight and attack. Say, God, you know, I'm doing it because I know that greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. And understand that God's got your back. I know it may not have felt like it through the years of pain and torment, but all in all, God's got your back. He's got your back. But just trust him. Just keep trusting him.
Yes. Amen. Amen. And I know your heart that was once troubled and overwhelmed. I'm so glad this woman of God was here to present her testimony and what she experienced to you, that will kind of shed light and bring a greater and a better perspective on where you are and why you feel the way that you feel and why you've been dealing with the things that you've been dealing with. And so I thank God that she was here to pour in the oil and the wine to cause you to realize and to understand that, look, I don't have to stay here, so I got to get past this point, and I must forgive, because forgiveness is not for them, but it's for me, so that I can be released from the link in that chain that keeps me bound and keep me in a place of confinement, and, you know, keep me in a place. Once again, thank you for tuning in to The Blueprint.